Rarely has an opportunity come around like the one we have with FinTech today. This evolving industry has and will continue to change our relationship with money for years to come. To be clear, FinTech stands for financial technology. How do professionals in this space find each other, network, and share resources to help each other shake up the world? In this episode, a mission to change the landscape of financial services and how one of the largest FinTech platforms in the world empowers the best and brightest in FinTech to connect, network, drive impact together. Welcome to the second episode of Meet the Founder Live. I'm your host, John Saunders, founder of Forward Advisory Solutions, a coaching and consultancy firm, and author of The Optimizer, building and leading a team of serial innovators. My firm was built on the foundation of over 20 years as an executive distribution leader on Wall Street and a relentless focus on mission clarity, collaborative innovation, and problem solving. Meet the Founder Live offers you insights into trailblazing companies through live conversations with the ability to answer your questions live in the chat. To start, please drop in there where you're calling us from and your favorite FinTech company if you have one out there, so we can get a sense of our audience and where you're calling in from, and you know how to use the chat function, because around the 30-minute mark, we'll use the chat function. You can ask Angel questions live in the chat. So in today's episode, we'll meet first-time founder Angel Lorente, who launched his company, FinTech Connector, in 2017. The company's mission is to empower financial service professionals, investors, and FinTech entrepreneurs around the world to connect and grow together to drive value creation for members and an impact for financial services customers. Angel is the founder and CEO of FinTech Connector, a globally acclaimed member platform with over 4,500 members spanning 125 countries. I think there's only 200 on the UN list, so pretty good coverage. His visionary leadership propels this platform, uniting experts, investors, financial institutions, and entrepreneurs to cultivate FinTech innovation. Prior to FinTech Connector, Angel spent 26 years at Morgan Stanley, where he was an executive director, leading multifaceted CFO teams covering trading businesses, risk management, and treasury functions. Beyond his corporate achievements, Angel is an avid contributor to the startup ecosystem. He offers invaluable counsel and membership to financial services innovators, mentorship, and FinTech entrepreneurs, empowering them to scale and navigate the complexities of their enterprises. He's married with 3 kids, lives on Long Island, with one about to graduate from college and one from high school this May. Fun fact, Angel is a level 2 Krav Maga instructor in Israeli self-defense, in a form of Israeli self-defense. He's built a reputation as a collaborative influencer who excels in highly competitive environments where leadership and teamwork are keys to success. Angel, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
John, thank you so much. Wow, I'm blushing from that great introduction that you just gave me. But I appreciate you having me here today. And thank you for everyone that is joining us from wherever you are around the world.
The pleasure is all mine. So just before we dive in here, can we just start with what the heck is FinTech? I've talked to some people recently about the show coming up and found some folks weren't really familiar with the term.
Yeah, look, your guess is as good as mine. Look, the reality is that FinTech is a very broad term that, especially I would say over the last 5 years, have been loosely thrown around. And for me, when I think about FinTech, it's really around how technology is disrupting and or innovating financial services. And if you bear with me for 1 second, when I think about disruption, I'm looking at it as this technology is either changing the way banks are doing business, or it is actually including or introducing a new way of doing business and bringing a population that was left out of banking before into the banking industry. For example, if you think about M-Pesa, for those that don't know, this is a company that was created by the mobile, I think it's Safaricom in Kenya in 2007. And what they do is, through the phones with no access to bank accounts, gives millions of people access to be able to store, transfer, and use a form of credits around their phone in terms of interacting and including commerce for a whole generation of people that were unbanked or underbanked in this country. So that's one way that I look at disruption. They're totally entering a new market and giving people access to banking-like services without even using a bank. But then I think about it too. There could be aspects where FinTech is around incremental innovation, and you're thinking about how the industry, how a bank is using technology to make their business better in terms of the way that they service their clients, right? We have this term that many have here called banking as a service. What is it really? It's really a fintech company with a nice tool in front of a traditional bank. And in both ways, they're partnering to help each other out and to provide better service to clients in terms of distribution and access to banking services. So that for me at a high level, 20,000 feet is the way that I think about fintech. It's technology that is helping kind of make banking better for all.
So important. And, so much in the West, we just sort of take banking for granted, right? It's just something you go down, sign up for a bank account, and off you go. But for millions of people around the world, they simply don't have access. And that's part of the story here as well. So, right, evolving how we sort of improve the experience for consumers here, and certainly gaining access for millions of people in the years to come. Thank you for that context. And I see we have somebody jumping in the chat here already. Yummies. Angel is so insightful. Look at that. We've already got a fan on here. Thanks, Yummies, for jumping on there. Before we get into the meat of the questions here, Angel, love to learn what you've learned from this martial arts training and work you've done over the years. Can I get the pronunciation right? Krav Maga? Did I have that right?
You got it right. So for those that don't know, Krav Maga is a self-defense martial arts that is taught by the Israeli military, but there is a actual civilian version of that. And I was taking Krav Maga. I was taking prior to COVID, Krav Maga for almost 10 years. I was able to test to become a level 1 instructor. Then I got invited to become a level 2 instructor. And really at the core of it, it's how to just defend yourself, of course. But a lot of what they teach you is also around self-awareness, not situational awareness, not self-awareness, situational awareness. So that way, avoid problems before they happen. And what that allows you to do is that it really allows you to say, all right, yeah, I know that if I ever had to defend myself, I would know how to do it. But if I could avoid the situation by trusting my gut instinct and not being in places where danger could happen, or if I am in a dangerous situation, trying to find a way to escape before engaging, that is what Krav Maga really teaches you, is like have very good situational awareness. So that way, defense number 1 is getting away from the danger. But if you had to protect yourself, you could then start engaging your martial arts skills. Thank God I have never had to use it in that way.
But, as a guy who lives in and around a major metropolitan area and has probably been on a million trains and subways in his life, probably
Sure.
Makes you feel a little bit more confident going about those journeys. And 26 years on Wall Street, probably needed to, sort of feel like you needed to maybe protect yourself once in a while, having
in different ways.
Similarly, a long career myself there. But thinking about that, sort of the lessons you've learned there now after 26 years in corporate America, one of the biggest banks in the country and the world, how does it feel to be an entrepreneur? And are there any lessons you've been able to apply there from Krav Maga?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, being an entrepreneur is definitely different than working for a bank for 26 years. For those that don't know or that have never tried it, the part about it is it's having the ability to, again, trust that gut feeling. When I started FinTech Connector, it was more along the lines that I was working at Morgan Stanley full time. I had let's go back to 2016, 17, just a little bit of history. The reason I started FinTech Connector was because I wanted just to get involved in the FinTech space. I was hearing all these stuff going on around how FinTech was disrupting financial services. I didn't want to be left behind. So I said, all right, what do I need to do? I enrolled in an MIT FinTech course, the first of its kind at the time. It was an online course, 12 weeks. And having the ability to join that course really allowed me to start interfacing with people in the space, which then gave me all right, I said, this is great. I'm online. I'm meeting a lot of people. But the first thing that came to me was I want to meet people in person because I'm a people person. I like to meet you, understand what you're doing and so forth. So I created a meetup group and we ended up coming together at this bar, Hurley's. And ultimately that meetup group became what is FinTech Connected today. I met a lot of great members. Some of them became our angel investors and allowed us to grow. Now, we'll go into a little bit more details around FinTech Connector later on in the story. But for me, I had the ability to grow FinTech Connector and kind of wear dual hats because I was still at Morgan Stanley. It was an outside business interest. And I was able to start creating FinTech Connector almost as my side gig. So I had a bit of that safety net that most entrepreneurs today, when they cut that umbilical cord and say, all right, I'm going all in, they have to go all in. Since May of 2023, I am now that all-in entrepreneur. But what I had working for me is the fact that I had built a foundation with FinTech Connector, so that when I departed ways with Morgan Stanley, I already had a platform with over 4,000 members in 120 plus countries that we were already engaging in different ways, and we also had corporate partners. So there was a safety net that came with still being employed. But the reality is, now that I'm not, it's trusting that gut instinct, is getting up in the morning and just saying, you know what, I don't feel like it today, but I still got to do it, and continue to do that.
That's awesome. And, like so many entrepreneur journeys, right? They started as maybe a bit of, I'm going to call it a side hustle during their in addition to their 9-to-5 gig, if you will, and certainly sounds a lot like the journey you went on. And fascinating. And I love the fact that, this started with like 2 members, at a meetup at a bar on Thursday nights in New York City, and is now 4,500 all over the world and growing every day. So when you think about really the sort of purpose, the mission of this company, really, and the why you launched it, like what's the mission behind it? What are you trying to do here?
Yeah. So before I give you the full, our mission is really to, how do we connect people, opportunities, and capital to collaborate on and create that next generation of financial services innovation. But going back to the story, the origin story, when I started this as just 2 people at a bar, Hurley's, which was right up the block from Morgan Stanley's headquarters, it was, again, really, I just wanted to get involved in what was happening to banks. I didn't want to be left behind. I wanted to understand, how do I get involved? I had 20 plus years of experience at the time, but it was never in a FinTech type space. When I started meeting people at this bar, again, I did this every week for 12 weeks of the course. And we went from 2 people that first time. By the time the course was over, we would get 20 to 30 people showing up at this bar Hurley's on a Thursday to grab a beer and talk FinTech. And the theme that was starting to come out was, there were a lot of people like myself that were coming out of banking and saying, I just want to get involved. I want to understand what's going on in the industry. How do I get involved? How do I leverage my experience? And as I met more earlier stage entrepreneurs, because that's who we primarily cater to, those idea stage to kind of series A, B entrepreneurs in the FinTech space, they would come and say, Angel, I'm building this payments app. I don't have a lot of money to hire a lawyer or a compliance person right now, but do you know anyone in the network that could give me some advice? And I said, you know what? I do know someone. And that's when I would tap into my network of experienced executives and experts, and I would introduce them to these entrepreneurs. So it became a very loose way of me just kind of working my network at this bar, Hurley's, and connecting people. The extension to that was, then I started having people reaching out to me that were taking a course or found out about me in terms of what I was doing, and said, I love what you're doing, Angel. I love to do the same thing in my city, whether that was the UK, London, whether that was in Madrid, whether that was in Zurich. We started getting community partners that then were starting to create FinTech connector communities around the world, where they were connecting people in the same way that I was doing it here in New York, bringing experts, executives, and entrepreneurs together to help each other out. So as you can see, right, the theme here is the experts and the executives were getting more ingrained in the FinTech space, and the entrepreneurs were now access to a brain trust, a community of people that could help them along the journey. And that's really what it's all about. So how do we, again, connect these people, opportunities, and capital to innovate financial services?
And always, such bringing together such like-minded people that want to help each other and drive impact, which certainly I see. I love seeing that on your website there and what you're trying to do. And by the way, I see a question in the chat here from looks like Felicia. I just want to mention Felicia, and looks like we had a little technical difficulty at the start. I got a notice from StreamYard on that on the LinkedIn feed that we'll take questions at around the 30-minute mark. So please do keep putting those in the chat. And for those of you who are already intrigued and want to check out FinTech Connector, I'm going to drop a link in the chat so you can sign up today if you'd like. Definitely encourage you to do that. So thinking about, now that you're full-time, you've left the corporate space behind almost a year. It's hard to believe. I remember when we first met in, I think, 2019, when this thing was just getting sort of getting on its legs and starting to get some traction. What are some of your goals with FinTech Connector? What are you trying to do here?
Yeah, so going back to my original point, it's really continuing to bring this network, grow this network, and it's grow it globally. We're now in 125 countries, and we continue to build our network. And my mission has always been, again, how do we connect people, opportunities, and capital. And to be able to do that, the way that I'm going to is to leverage the community to do that. And I'll tell you how that works. To have a successful community, you need, in my opinion, you need three key ingredients, right? You need to have a quality member base, which we're growing there now, and we continue to do that. We need an engaged community, which we are leveraging our platform to do that. And now that I'm full time, I do spend a lot of time with members in terms of understanding what their mission and vision is. But more importantly, is engaging other members to come back to the community and engage and start helping each other out. And then the final ingredient is continuing to have our members bring the best of their network and their colleagues to join FinTech Connector, because that is when we will really have the biggest impact, when we're able to together find those opportunities, work on those opportunities by collaborating, and ultimately figuring out how do we help that next generation of entrepreneurs create what they need. And how do you do that? It's investing in two ways. It's investing human capital and also investing funding capital to be able to drive that forward. So a key thing that I like to say there, John, is around helping that next generation of FinTech entrepreneurs. I think that's going to be critical in terms of what we're seeing transpire in the space.
I really appreciate this mindset of, sort of passing it on to the next group of professionals. And obviously you're still very much deep in the game, but already thinking about that legacy and what's next and how you can help that next generation coming along. Because let's face it, this is one industry that has, ripe for evolution, right? Which is why I think the technology industry started to sort of poking around a few decades ago and has only continued to gotten bigger. And one of the largest FinTech companies in the world is based right here in the United States, which I learned recently getting ready for this meeting here, which is Stripe, a company near and dear to my heart, as I use them for my own payment services, and they've been pretty good to work with. Although I have some feedback for you, Stripe, if you're curious, let me know. And so, what are some of your membership goals for this year? I know you've got a big initiative to try to grow that quality membership base. What are you thinking about for goals there?
Yeah, so right now we're about 40. Actually, looking at today, we're close to 4,600 members. Our goal is to get to 10,000 members. So for those that are not yet part of FinTech Connector, please join, and we'll drop a link later on. And please be part of our growing community. Also, we are now, we have paid memberships. My goal is we already have paid members that are helping us. We're a member-funded organization, and I think that's critically important. We haven't taken any VC money and don't intend to, because I want this to grow organically through our member base. So ultimately, we want to get to 1,000 paid members. And the final piece is to start seeing partnerships, business opportunities, and investments coming through the platform, because that's when you really move away from just saying, hey, we're another LinkedIn for the FinTech and financial services world, to really being not just a connection spot, but a place where these opportunities come, and we're able to make those connections that allow, again, going back to my original point, creating that next generation of FinTech innovation.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. There's an opportunity here ripe, and it's already happening, for value creation with this network you've put together. And part of that is having different events and ways to facilitate these relationships and this networking. So what are some of the things you have lined up for 2024 to help drive that? Yeah,
so because we're a global organization and we have members all around the world, we definitely heavily invested in doing virtual events, because we want to have an opportunity to bring members together to meet each other, not only through the platform, which they can use actively to send messages, connect, and so forth, but having, in essence, I like to call a virtual real world event. And I think you participated in one recently where we have these member meet and greets, where we bring people together. We have a little bit of topic, but for the most part, we like to leave enough time for people to introduce each other, kind of say who you are, where you're calling in from, how you're involved in FinTech, and a call to action, like how can we help you on your journey. So we're going to continue to do that. But one of the key things that we started as a meetup group, so meaning being real world, in person, at a bar. So we still continue to do these events, even though we've graduated now a bit, where we'll have, for example, last year in June, we had here in New York, and prior to 2023 and 2022, we did it in Zurich and in Stockholm. We bring together people for an innovation day, where we bring founders to pitch and talk to us about what they need with our members. We then have a private dinner that evening, and then the next day we'll charter a boat and go out for a lunch, networking lunch cruise, wherever. Last year it was on It was down the Hudson River. We went down to the Statue of Liberty. The year before that, when we were in Zurich, we were on Lake Zurich, which was fantastic. And our goal for this year is to do 2 to 3 more of those types of events. So we're planning on going back to Switzerland, and also then here in the U.S., we're looking to do potentially one here in New York or Miami as well. And if there's another city where you think we should be coming, please feel free to put it into the chat, because I'd love to see if there's a way that we could bring our members to your city. So that's an open plug there.
I mean, the global story just continues to grow. I love these experiential ideas, and certainly appreciated being on that call on Monday with some of the other members of the group. In fact, I have 2 follow-up, what I'll call networking calls with people from that. So thank you for that opportunity and getting a chance to tell my story a little bit.
Thank you, Joe.
No, my pleasure. And by the way, if Deepti Pawa is listening, my one friend in Switzerland, she might be interested in being a part of that event when you get over there at the end of if that one comes together, or when that one comes together. And for those who want to learn more about it, I am dropping a link. I've dropped a couple of links in the chat, one to sign up as a member and one for fintechconnector.com to just learn more about the organization. So definitely check those out. And in just a few minutes, we're going to start to take the Q&A live in the chat. I know we've got a couple in there already. So if you do have questions for Angel, by all means, start to queue those up in the chat there. And I know we had some technical difficulties early on. If you want to drop in where you're calling in from, by all means, and if you missed that, please take the chance to do that. Let's keep going with the questions here. I think we're off and running here. So membership, it looks like different experiences, different networking opportunities, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You also talk about impact, and it seems like a key theme for yourself and certainly the people that you're attracting. What is the impact that you're seeking here? What is that about?
Yeah, so from an impact perspective, it's really to help drive business, drive change, get people together, get people talking and working with each other. But I also think that we also need to think about impact. As I think about FinTech Connector and the type of impact that I want to leave behind, it's not only helping entrepreneurs, but it's really looking at those parts of the world where FinTech could really help and could really create an impact. And I mentioned earlier on when we started the conversation, right, when you asked me the question of what the hell is FinTech, I mentioned M-Pesa. There was a reason why I did that, is because there are many parts of the world, and even here in the US, where there are millions of people that are underbanked and unbanked. And I firmly believe that this next generation of entrepreneurs are starting to build the technologies, or are focusing on the technologies that could help bring more people into the banked world. And whether that banked with a traditional bank or banked in different ways, such as using technology in ways that we haven't seen it before, whether that's using cryptocurrencies or some form of digital assets and wallets and so forth to help move money and have people store money and transact in different ways, whatever that is, it's yet to be seen, right? And people are starting to develop, and entrepreneurs are tackling this. I'll give you a great example. I was down in just this past end of January. I was at FinTech Islands, great event that was organized in the Caribbean, in Barbados. I've met many entrepreneurs, and at the core message of many of these entrepreneurs in the Caribbean is, how do we get more of our diaspora involved in terms of bringing them into an environment where they have access to services that they don't have access today, whether that is being able to make payments in ways that they're, instead of with cash or their form of cash, being able to get small loans that they can today, peer-to-peer type lending between folks, and different types of solutions that they're looking to do that has nothing to do really with just changing banking, but is really getting more people to have access to financial instruments or a financial life that they don't have today. And at the core of that too is around financial literacy, because it's not a matter of just providing a nice app that gives people access. You really need to lead people down a journey in terms of how do you educate them, in terms of how to use these apps and how to use banking, and then how to then, so they could do it in a way that doesn't get them in trouble or hurts them. Anyhow, the reason why I talk about that is because, again, while FinTech Connector is about creating impact in terms of helping that next generation of entrepreneurs, what I see is that many of these entrepreneurs are starting, and many that I interact with or have interacted with, are looking to build that technology that is really looking to make an impact globally around the world.
That is awesome. And again, can't stress enough when you think about, you use the term unbanked or underbanked. I think most people in America can't even imagine what the heck that even means or why those are words, right? Because banks are on every corner in any town you drive to, right? But so much of the world just isn't there. And then, sort of there's that access point for those folks. And then there's this kind of other angle of it, which is sort of upgrading how we interact in sort of the Western world, if you will, with banking. And I think of, how often I use Venmo, which I couldn't even imagine Venmo just a few years ago. Now, I mean, it's amazing how often. I don't think I've ever handed money to anybody in the last year or two. I just go on Venmo and send them, $25 or whatever it is that we want to exchange money around, which is fascinating to me. It's just changing at so many levels. I love this story about Barbados. You also had a story where you went to Morocco a couple of months ago to speak on a panel. What was the story there?
So that was an opportunity. One of our community partners, Miriam, she's based in Morocco. I was invited to speak at an asset management conference, and I was speaking about what type of innovation we're seeing in the asset management space, particularly what companies here in the U.S. are doing. And so I was invited to go, but I had an opportunity, since we do have members in Morocco as well. I was able to host a dinner for about 20 FinTech Connector members, and got to meet some of the founders and some of the things that they were building. And the reality goes back to my original point, is they're looking to build solutions that actually give access to people in different ways, or is changing the way that banking is delivered to different clients. One thing that I do want to say, which I didn't say in terms of my point on impact, is as I'm thinking about these entrepreneurs that are creating that next generation of financial services innovation, is what I want FinTech Connector to be, and I also want to make sure for those that are listening here today or will listen to the recordings, is that we need to find ways to help these entrepreneurs. Because one of the key areas that I noticed, especially in these regions, whether it's Morocco or the Caribbean or parts of Africa, is giving folks or giving these entrepreneurs access to be listened to understand what they're building and find ways that we could help them. And in many cases, it's going to be, how do we introduce them to people that could provide capital? Because in many of these regions, the ability or the access to capital is very small. And there's very few people that are doing it. So what I want to be able to do is highlight or showcase many of these entrepreneurs to make sure that they also have access to this capital, to be able to build some of these solutions that they're looking to build.
Not only access to banking, but also access to investors, right? Yeah. And, fascinating to me. I don't think a lot of people, when they think asset management, my background for 23 years, they think of Wall Street, right? They don't often think of like Northern Africa. What did you learn about the asset management industry while traveling through Northern Africa, and what maybe surprised you about it?
Yeah, so first of all, it's very small compared to what we think about the U.S., but it's still a very active group. What I got is, and while the conference was in Morocco, it was an African asset management conference. So we had people coming in from West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, and really part of it is how do we as asset managers provide better services to our clients? And it's not only about FinTech. So it wasn't a FinTech conference, just to be clear. It was more around how do we deliver better services to our clients, but they understand that part of delivery of that service is we need to make sure that we stay on top of how innovation is changing the industry if we want to remain competitive, not only within Africa, but as part of the wider world in terms of how we want to be perceived in Africa in terms of our asset management industry. So it was good to see that perspective, because I was very surprised in a pleasant way in terms of the level of engagement, both from the participants in the asset management industry, but government officials that were there, as well as the entrepreneurs that were there, that were listening to what was going on and figuring out how they could get involved.
What I find particularly compelling about that story is, again, I don't often think of sort of North or any part of Africa in asset management, and part of maybe that's me being a bit naive about it, but one, that it's, there's a robust environment going on there, and that these people are looking to innovate and grow and expand their reach. And, here they are in a place where we don't often think about that industry. So that is fantastic. So Africa, Barbados, Switzerland. I mean, you've got the map covered here, my friend. Is any Asian events coming up? I feel like we're missing Asia here. Anything there?
Haven't done anything in Asia in the past recently, and the reason being is, again, we're a global platform online. and we're driven by community partners. So we're looking for our next community partner in Asia to be able to start bringing more events onto that side of the world as well. So more to come on that. So we're still in the growth process. So it's just about finding the right people to help us open doors.
I'm going to throw it out there. I did some work over there a few years ago and met a bunch of folks in the ASEAN Business Council. Might be a group to connect with at some point.
Okay.
They are well connected with that part of the world, and maybe could put something together there for you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Right? It could be fun. So, FinTech Connector sounds a little bit like LinkedIn to me, right? So what's different about it? Why did you go ahead and launch it when there's what feels like a similar tool out there already?
No, great question. Again, when I started, it was more like, hey, I just want to get people together at a bar. I didn't think I was going to be fast forward 6-7 years later. And here I am creating a LinkedIn like. You know what? I always tell people if they want to know what FinTech Connector is without having to go into the full mission and vision, it's a LinkedIn like niche community of financial services executives, business and investment experts, and FinTech entrepreneurs. And the purpose of doing that is what I believe, and I've gotten this feedback from others, it's LinkedIn is where everyone goes to connect. It is a professional world. It is the professional world for networking, and it's to all industries. But what I feel sometimes it's missing is the ability to bring very curated communities together that have a common interest and that have a different set of conversations in terms of what they need to be successful. So for me, when I said, all right, what I want to create is a platform to now move from the real world to an online world. So that way I'm no longer the bottleneck and people are able to connect on their own, was along that. It was, let me start it out as a LinkedIn-like platform. So kudos to LinkedIn, but let's keep the conversation and the opportunities in terms of what we want to do around getting people to collaborate on very specific initiatives and projects, and ultimately getting them to create those initiatives by providing a level of investment into some of these projects is what I want. It's my ultimate dream in terms of how I see FinTech Connector evolving from a connection platform to an overall, really, it becomes an ecosystem for innovation.
I love that idea of ecosystem, right? You've got all these resources sort of surrounding you, and it's a matter, and they're all like-minded, looking to drive impact, looking to promote and advance the FinTech world. And I think that's really, to me, what makes this organization, your organization, so unique, in that all these social media groups have become kind of this catch-all for everything in the world out there, right? And you just kind of can get lost in all the noise of these things you see in your feed. They're not that relevant to you. As a member of FinTech Connector, if you're a FinTech professional, investor, enabler, what have you, right? You go there and you're only going to find information about that. Not to say that you're not on LinkedIn and have thousands of followers out there, and a great way to kind of cross-connect with what Angel's doing in that space. I will drop his LinkedIn profile in there as well. If you want to connect with Angel on LinkedIn, you're welcome to do that. And I already dropped in how to become a member, as well as the FinTech website. So with that, I want to ask one more question here, and then we'll open up to the audience chat. And we're seeing some questions piling here. Please keep adding those in there, and we'll get to yours in just a minute here. So let's come back to Krav Maga here for a second here, buddy. As a founder, how is your thinking, and how do you see yourself applying that as you've kind of evolved as an entrepreneur in the last 6 or 7 years? How has that changed in your thinking?
Yeah, well, for the record, I'm actually not doing Krav Maga anymore because since the school closed. I still do go to the gym, try to stay in shape, but the reality is that I don't do it anymore. And actually, I'm getting older, so it's actually starting to hurt when it starts to hurt a little bit more, especially because it tends to be a very physical type of martial arts. But you never lose what you have. So I think going back to my original point is, as I approach this as an entrepreneur, is to trust my gut, right? In terms of if something doesn't feel right in terms of what I'm doing, then trust my gut. Have that situational awareness where I'm not just focused just right in front of me, but trying to see steps ahead of me to make sure that there are no dangers. But not just don't look at it from a danger perspective. Look at it, are there opportunities out there that I might not be looking at because I'm just so tunnel vision and focused on what's right in front of me. Look, as an entrepreneur, it's being able to find that balance of right in front of you and what you need to do to take things to the next step in terms of your checklist and things to do. But you always got to make sure that you're keeping that situational awareness around you to make sure that you're not seeing that you're seeing the dangers and you're seeing the opportunities as they come up.
what could be a more important lesson for entrepreneurs and founders than to have a strong sense of situational awareness with your competitors, with your employees, with your sort of environment in front of you? I love that. So with that, let's jump over to the audience questions here. We've got a few popping in the chat. I want to throw at you here, my friend. Felicia, we'll get to yours now here. She said, Felicia Ortiz, I'll throw it up on the screen so we have it. So you can see it. I'm helping a fintech startup that is geared towards Gen Z entrepreneurs. Any advice for the Gen Z space in fintech?
Yes. So look, I think from a Gen Z perspective, that's what's driving a lot of innovation. And I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs that are creating innovation for the millennials, the Gen Z, and so forth. From an advice perspective, again, without knowing what type, it would be good to know better what type of a fintech company is. For example, I'll just throw this out there. If they're looking to create a fintech solution within the payment space, is whether they're catering to the Gen Z, they know their clients best. So it's figuring out how to tap into that client base, but making sure that as you're building a solution that is in the banking world, that as a fintech company, you don't lose focus, going back to my situational awareness of what you need to be successful without getting into trouble. Because here's what happens. The banking is a highly regulated space. And whether you're going to be partnering with a traditional bank or not, or going on your own, the reality is there's regulation everywhere. And it's getting harder, to be honest. If you've been following the trends in terms of what the regulators are doing, like right now, for those that are in the banking as a service, meaning that are partnering with banks, there's a whole bunch of regulation, or what I like to say has come out around third-party risk management and ensuring what do these fintechs and these banks need to have in place to ensure that they're able to transact together. So my advice for you, Felicia, is as this fintech is building out their startup geared towards Gen Z, my advice is ensuring that without knowing what they're doing, is that they're staying within certain guardrails so they don't get in trouble before they even get off the ground.
That sounds like solid advice, right? So you don't have the regulators coming and knocking on your door before you even get this thing launched. So do a little learning first is what I'm hearing there. I appreciate that. We have another question here from Konstantinos, who looks like also goes by Gus, but he had a question for you here.
Hey, Gus, I know Gus very well.
Oh, good. I know the focus on financial services, but have you considered expanding to other industries that can benefit from fintech resources practices as well?
Great question. So remember when we talked about what the heck is fintech? I think fintech, in my definition as well, is a broad term. Now, if you think about how financial technology is touching, it's not only touching banking, but think about e-commerce platforms that are building these buy now, pay later solutions within that, right? In terms of incorporating that. Think about insurance and in the insurance industry and the type of technology that they need to build as well. Some could argue that insurance, insurtech, and fintech are the same thing. I look at everything that is within the financial services that touches some form of finance as fintech, and kind of bring it into my domains as it relates to that. So yes, I definitely consider other, and we do have members on our platform that are building, let's say, e-commerce solutions that are incorporating very specific fintech type products in there, and we invite them to join because they could benefit from the type of expertise and people on our platform. Now, what we haven't touched is areas that are not touching any of that. So you could argue that, within the insurance space, like health insurance, we really haven't gone into that space because we still want to keep within our own guardrails of ensuring that we are focused on those companies that are building financial services innovation.
I think, there's so many adjacencies here, right? Which might be sort of a thought for Gus as well. I think about, I came across a company when I was doing some consulting work for a group called Branch. And it's ironic that they're a fintech company, and they are a branchless bank, which I thought the name was kind of funny, right? When you think about that, and one of the things they specialize in is helping like the gig economy. So it's fascinating. I don't think you think of fintech and you think of the gig economy, if you will, but they started out getting essentially payments when COVID launched. People stopped paying cash for pizza delivery. And so these guys that were used to going home with like a bunch of money in their pocket suddenly didn't have any money. They had to wait for the company to pay them in 2 weeks or whatever. And they were able to accelerate that radically. And I found, in fact, when they were making payments to me, it was fantastic. You'd get paid in like an hour after you submitted an invoice, which was incredible. So one thought maybe for Gus is to sort of think about some of the adjacencies there in FinTech. I don't think people were thinking about pizza delivery in FinTech at the same time with Branch, but yeah, they've built a really nice customer base from that.
Yeah, and that was my point around like looking at the e-commerce or even on the insurance side is there is so many adjacencies to your point around how financial technology it's embedded finance is what I like to call it. It's embedded finance that we're finding everywhere.
Right. Let's keep going. We've got a couple more questions. We want to get to the rapid fire questions here in a minute, and we'll wrap it up. But we got a few more in the chat I want to get to from Victoria Soltez. FinTech's biggest obstacle is the lack of enabling banking and payment provider options. We see less and less correspondent accounts on the market lately. How do you see the solution?
Yeah, that's Victoria. That's a great question. Good to see you here. Look, I think this is definitely an area that's still ripe for disruption in that respect. So, and it's really about as we're thinking about fintech companies that are moving into the payment space. And I actually speak to a couple of earlier stage entrepreneurs that are thinking about disruption around the fintech space, and they're in the payment space. And I think an area there is opportunities here, but really, and I'll be honest, this is not necessarily my expertise, but I think I would love to maybe follow up with you on that, because I know a couple of entrepreneurs that I'm currently working with that are very eager to kind of tap into what is that. Payments is so broad, but it's being able to compartmentalize and then figuring out where can we disrupt. And one of the things I was talking to one of our members on FinTech Connector is when I think about FinTech and how FinTech entrepreneurs should be disrupting or innovating financial services is looking for those opportunities just like this one, where we are seeing less corresponding accounts, but are there alternative solutions that we're able to fit into that space? So let's talk about that, because I'm curious to understand exactly how we could disrupt this area and who are some of the people that I have in my network that could be good for that.
That is fascinating. When you think about, as I was researching here to get ready for today, I was looking at some of the biggest fintech companies in the country, and two of them, Stripe and Plaid, what they essentially do is stand between financial organizations and consumers to help make that, to facilitate those transactions even more easily, which is interesting. But so lots and these are companies worth tens of billions of dollars, which is pretty astounding. So certainly some room for disruption there and a growth. Another question here from John Thompson, and maybe we touched on this a little bit, but sort of some of the things, with the rapidly expanding global network, how do you drive membership engagement and cohesive community culture within the network? So how do you think about culture with your group? You're doing all these cool events, but what do you think about with culture?
Yeah, so it's important about staying with the mission and vision, right? And I always, what I always tell people is my mission is that how do I connect people, opportunities, and capital, right, to innovate financial services? And if you have a mission that you believe in, and then you are then creating an environment where you live and breathe that mission and make sure that everyone that you talk to, whether it's people that you're talking to online or physically in a location, or just driving that message forward, is ensuring that the culture that our members that are joining continue to drive with that. Everyone that I speak to is how do we engage our members in a way that we are driving towards not just connecting. Yeah, it's great to engage, but how do we start thinking about using our platform to drive impact, right? Going back to my thoughts around impact. So again, important that as people are joining FinTech Connector is understanding what our mission is. Ultimately, then it's leading down a path of engagement, and we're still working on it. I don't want to say that I've figured it out yet. I'm still early stage, but I believe that if I'm focused on what that mission is, then continuing to get people engaged around how do we connect, how do we collaborate, and how do we help create innovation, right? And then ultimately is once that mission is there, is then having our members bring the best of their network to come to FinTech Connector if those people are the type of people that would be a good fit for our community to be able to continue to drive that forward. I hope I answered the question.
I certainly feels like a strong answer to me. And to me, everything I've learned in knowing you over the last few years is, this organization is about finding win-wins, having a culture of good people who want to help and do disruption for good, for impact, as you've said. And that's certainly the kind of people I've met through your organization so far. And it's really been great. Looks like Victoria's intrigued with a follow-up conversation here, buddy. So get your calendar out. So if you want to, there's the mission there, right? Connecting the fintech world for impact. Such a powerful message here. And I think that was all the questions we had in the chat. So let's jump over to the rapid fire questions here, buddy, and see how we're doing there. And I'm going to drop my LinkedIn profile in here. If people want to connect with me, by all means do so. But let's jump over to the rapid fire questions and we'll get this thing wrapped up. But important question here, Angel. Everyone's dying to know, what is your favorite thing to eat?
All right, here we go. So one of my favorite things to eat is called vaca frita. That means fried cow. It is a Cuban dish, and my wife is Cuban, so she is the best one that makes this, but there are other places you can get it. It is a Cuban dish that is fried and shredded flank steak that is made with onions, garlic, and lime. It's served with white rice, black beans, and plantains. So it's one of my favorite dishes to eat. Since my wife won't be able to cook it for everyone here, if you are ever in New York, a recommendation for you is visit Victor's Cafe in Times Square. It is a Cuban restaurant, old school Cuban restaurant, but nice. And make sure you get the vaca frita.
I mean, I'm hungry already, buddy. Favorite movie?
Top Gun. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but then I realized that whenever I get on amusement park rides, I get motion sickness. So it's still my favorite movie.
Tough lessons to learn. Maverick, fantastic, right? A favorite vacation spot?
Anything with a beach. South Florida, Caribbean beaches. I'm actually heading down to St. Thomas with my daughter for her 16th birthday in April. So I'm excited about that.
Happy birthday. Last photo on your phone?
Of my son at his with his rap group at the school concert this past Friday.
Nice. He's performing.
He performed. Yes, he did. Very good.
Cool. Very cool. Scariest animal?
Grizzly bear.
I think the first time we've heard a bear here on this show. Good one. Most audacious goal for a FinTech Connector?
100,000 paid members.
I love it. Well on your way with the focus and trajectory you're at here. Angel, describe your founder journey in 5 words, if you would.
Connecting the fintech world.
I love it. Thank you for that. And closing thoughts for our listeners here who were kind enough to join us today.
So look, sometimes opportunity comes disguised as adversity. So if you stay focused, you trust yourself, and don't let things bring you down, just kind of stay the path. That's something that I want to leave folks with today.
Life is filled with adversity, and so much of it is how we approach it every day, right? And certainly if there's anyone who's been more resilient, I don't know who it is besides you, taking this thing from a Thursday night hangout with 2 people to have the vision and the passion and resilience to stay with it to 4,500 members. Unbelievable. Angel, thank you for sharing your story with the Meet the Founder audience and live audience, and along with the transformative work that you're doing in undertaking to connect experts and entrepreneurs to innovate the financial services space for global impact and our connection with financial services. You really deserve a resounding thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to say thanks. Thank you. I'd like to say thanks to our listeners for joining this episode of Meet the Founder Live. Definitely check out Angel's website, fintechconnector.com. And if you're interested in joining Angel in his mission to connect the fintech world, join FinTech Connector today. I put the link in the chat. We'll drop it in the notes afterwards as well. Please join me tomorrow for an episode of Meet the Author Live. So in the thought leadership space with thought leader John Thompson III, author of Stack Your Deck, How to Be an Ace in Business and Life. And connect with me at JCS Optimizer on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter to learn more about live upcoming episodes or to talk about your mission and vision. Thanks again for joining us. I'm your host, John Saunders. Keep moving forward.